Dr. Eleanor Chen massaged her temples as she stared at the holographic display floating above her workstation. Outside the reinforced windows of Outpost Horizon, the endless void of space stretched beyond the Kuiper Belt, a darkness so complete it seemed to swallow light itself. She had been tracking the anomalous signal for 72 hours straight, her eyes burning from lack of sleep. Still nothing conclusive. Dr. Kavita Sharma asked, sliding a steaming cup of synthetic coffee across the desk. Eleanor shook her head, gratefully accepting the cup. The pattern repeats with mathematical precision. No natural phenomenon we know of produces sequences this ordered. The signal had first appeared as a slight irregularity in the quantum field monitors, equipment designed to detect ripples in space-time that might indicate viable wormhole locations. Instead, they had picked up what appeared to be deliberate pulses coming from a region of space where nothing should exist. The translation algorithm finished processing, Kavita said, her voice dropping to just above a whisper despite the fact that only 4 scientists staffed the remote outpost. She tapped her tablet, transferring the data to Eleanor's display. The message was short, rendered in perfect English. Humanity, maintain your distance. What lies here is not meant for you. Eleanor felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the station's perpetually inefficient heating system. We need to alert Earth Command immediately. The response came 16 hours later. Admiral Zhao's holographic form materialized in the center of the outpost's small conference room, his expression stern beneath salt and pepper hair. Behind him stood 3 members of the United Earth Government Science Advisory Board, their faces carefully neutral. Dr. Chen, we've reviewed your findings and consulted with our quantum linguistics experts. Zhao began, his voice clipped and professional. The consensus is that you're dealing with a sensor malfunction or possibly a previously undocumented cosmic radiation pattern. Sir, with all due respect, our equipment is functioning perfectly, Eleanor countered, forwarding the latest diagnostic reports. And the message specifically references humanity. This is first contact. One of the advisors, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, leaned forward. What you've discovered is certainly interesting, Dr. Chen, but interpreting random patterns as language is a well-documented psychological phenomenon. Your team is isolated, under considerable stress. We're not hallucinating, Kavita interrupted, uncharacteristically forceful. Admiral Zhao's expression hardened. Your orders are to continue monitoring and gathering data. A supply ship will arrive in 2 weeks with upgraded equipment to help determine the natural source of these emissions. The transmission ended before Eleanor could protest further. That night, after the rest of the team had finally succumbed to exhaustion, Eleanor remained at her station. The signal had changed, becoming stronger, more focused. She adjusted the receivers, trying to isolate any new information. Her screen flickered, went black, then illuminated with text that scrolled across the display without any input from her terminal. They come with gifts. The price is extinction. Eleanor's hand trembled as she reached for the emergency communication channel. Before she could activate it, every system in the outpost suddenly powered down, leaving her in total darkness except for the ghostly blue glow of her screen, where a countdown had appeared. 72:00, and decreasing by the second. 3 days until what, she couldn't guess, but somehow she knew humanity's future hinged on making people believe her warning before time ran out. Captain Marcus Rivera stood at perfect attention on the bridge of the UES Diplomat, his dress uniform uncomfortable but immaculate. The massive view screen showed what had once been merely an anomalous signal, but now appeared as an enormous structure, or rather, vessel, its surface rippling with subtle iridescence like oil on water. Receiving transmission, Captain, Lieutenant Vargas announced, her fingers dancing across her console. They're requesting permission to board. Rivera exchanged glances with Ambassador Hayes, the civilian leader of this first contact mission. The older man nodded almost imperceptibly. Grant permission, Rivera ordered, but maintain security protocols. All personnel to first contact stations. 30 minutes later, Rivera watched as the airlock cycled open. The delegation from Earth, 12 people representing military, scientific, and diplomatic corps, held their collective breath as the inner door slid aside. The beings that emerged were startlingly humanoid, tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. They moved with fluid precision. Their eyes were their most alien feature, entirely silver, reflecting the surroundings like perfect mirrors. The foremost alien stepped forward, raising an elegant hand in greeting. "I am Lizeri of the Ascended. We welcome you to our vessel and express our delight at this meeting of civilizations." The words came in perfect English, without any visible translation device. Ambassador Hayes stepped forward. "On behalf of the United Earth Government, we..." He was interrupted by a violent coughing fit from Commander Phillips, the mission's medical officer. The woman doubled over, her face turning alarming shades of purple. "Terminal adenocarcinoma," Lizeri said calmly, approaching the stricken officer. "May I?" Before anyone could object, the alien placed a slender hand on Philip's shoulder. A soft golden glow pulsed briefly between them, and the commander's coughing subsided immediately. "The malignancy has been neutralized," Lizeri explained. "A small gift to begin our friendship." Phillips took a deep breath, her expression one of wonder. "The pain is gone. Completely gone." Back at Outpost Horizon, now fully powered after the mysterious countdown had simply ended at 0 without incident, Dr. Eleanor Chen frantically analyzed the transmissions from the diplomat. "There," she said, pointing to a spectrographic analysis. "Do you see it, Kavita?" Dr. Sharma leaned closer. "Those spikes in the radiation band, are they coming from the aliens?" Eleanor nodded grimly. "And look at the molecular scan of the diplomat's hull." She pulled up another display showing microscopic changes to the vessel's outer plating. Something is restructuring the metal at an atomic level. She attempted to send her findings to Captain Rivera, composing an urgent warning about the radiation and hull degradation. The transmission initiated, progress bar crawling across her screen, then froze at 99% complete. Seconds later, a system error flashed. "Transmission corrupted. Communication failure." "Try again," Kavita urged. 5 more attempts yielded the same result. Eleanor's private terminal pinged with an encrypted message, not from Earth Command or the diplomat, but from General Amara Okafor of the African Union Defense Force. "Dr. Chen, your concerns about the signal have reached sympathetic ears. The Ascended have requested territory in Siberia and offered technological marvels in exchange. UEG is voting tomorrow, certain to approve. Something blocks direct communication with the diplomat crew. If you have evidence of threat, send it through this secure channel. Some of us are listening." Eleanor glanced at the new data coming in. The Ascended ship was actively scanning Earth's biosphere in unprecedented detail. "They're not here for cultural exchange," she whispered to Kavita. "They're cataloging us like specimens." The United Nations Assembly Hall had never been so packed with dignitaries. World leaders who typically sent representatives had come in person, filling the chamber with a nervous energy as the Ascended delegation glided down the central aisle. Eleanor watched the live broadcast from General Okafor's secure bunker beneath Lagos, her stomach nodding with each perfectly choreographed movement of the aliens. Lizeri approached the podium, silver eyes sweeping across the assembly. A respectful hush fell over the crowd. "Esteemed leaders of Earth," the alien began, voice musical and soothing. "We come bearing friendship and solutions to the challenges that have long plagued your promising species." Holographic displays materialized around the chamber, showing schematics for technologies beyond human comprehension. Power generators that extracted energy directly from quantum fluctuations, medical devices that could regrow limbs and organs, engines capable of bending space-time. "All of this," Lizeri continued, "we offer freely. We ask only for a small territory in the region you call Siberia, uninhabited land where we may establish cultural exchange and learn from one another." The Secretary General stepped forward. This generosity is overwhelming. May I ask why your people have chosen Earth for this remarkable partnership? Lizari's expression remained serene. We have observed your civilization for some time. Despite your limitations, we see great potential in humanity. You possess a quality rare in the universe, adaptability. We wish to nurture this quality. From her position at the back of the bunker, General Amara Okafor snorted. Convenient answer. No specifics, just flattery. Eleanor nodded, analyzing the molecular scans she had secretly taken from soil samples near an ascended landing site. The results confirmed her worst fears. Microscopic machines were already restructuring organic matter at the molecular level. On screen, the UN vote tallied. 192 nations in favor, 0 against, 1 abstention. The African Union, thanks to Okafor's influence. This is proceeding exactly as they planned. Dr. Sharma noted, her face illuminated by the glow of her tablet. They know exactly which buttons to push. Energy, medicine, space travel. Okafor's secure phone buzzed. Her expression darkened as she read the message. I've been reassigned. Effective immediately. Peacekeeping mission to Antarctica. Their isolating voices of dissent. Eleanor realized. We need to move quickly before they silence us completely. 3 days later, in an abandoned mining facility converted into a makeshift headquarters, Eleanor addressed the small gathering of scientists, military personnel, and intelligence officers who formed the core of what they now called the Cassandra Network. The Ascended aren't altruistic visitors, she explained, projecting her findings onto the wall. These Nanomachines are terraforming Earth at the molecular level, reconfiguring our atmosphere, soil, and water to support their biology, not ours. A former NASA engineer raised his hand. How long before the changes become irreversible? At current rates of molecular conversion, 6 months. Kaveda answered. Less in areas surrounding their facilities. Captain Rivera, who had been quarantined upon the diplomat's return, but had escaped with the help of sympathetic security personnel, stood up shakily, still recovering from radiation exposure. I saw things on their ship, he said, voice hoarse. During private meetings, the Ascended would flicker, like holograms losing signal. And the diplomatic team. Some of them started acting strangely afterward. Eleanor nodded grimly. We've detected unusual neural activity in officials who've had direct contact with the Ascended. They're somehow influencing human minds. So we're facing mind control, terraforming, and a world leadership that won't listen, Okafor summarized, having defied her reassignment orders. How do we fight that? Eleanor switched the projection to a schematic of a global communications network. We bypass the compromised channels. We show the world exactly what's happening, using the Ascended's own technology against them. And if they still don't listen? Someone asked. Then, Eleanor said solemnly, we prepare for a resistance humanity has never had to wage before, against an enemy already inside our gates. 6 months after the Ascended arrival, James Park huddled behind a storage container, his heart hammering against his ribs. The Siberian compound stretched around him, gleaming structures of impossible architecture rising against the snow-laden sky. As a maintenance technician cleared to service the human-accessible sections of the facility, he'd never ventured this deep before. Position. General Okafor's voice crackled through his subdermal communicator, the technology reverse-engineered from salvage Ascended components. Approaching Central Hub, James whispered, security is lighter than expected. They don't anticipate resistance, Eleanor replied from the Cassandra Network's mobile command center, hidden 100 kilometers away. They think we're all either converted or cowed. The reports had been trickling in for months. Residents near Ascended facilities experiencing strange dreams, nosebleeds, behavioral changes, wildlife dying off in expanding circles around their compounds. When mainstream media dismissed these as conspiracy theories, the Cassandra Network documented everything, building their case methodically. James slipped through a service entrance, the cloaking device on his belt bending light around him. Not invisibility, but enough to confuse surveillance systems. The corridor beyond pulsed with soft blue light, the air carrying a metallic taste that made his tongue tingle. "I'm in," he confirmed, activating the specialized camera embedded in his contact lenses. "Streaming now." The feed transmitted directly to Eleanor and her team. What they saw confirmed their worst fears. Massive machinery extending from floor to ceiling, pumping iridescent particles into channels that led to distribution systems throughout the facility. "Those particles match what we found in water samples near the compound," Kavita noted. "They're seeding the entire ecosystem." James continued deeper, following the sound of voices. He entered an observation gallery overlooking a vast chamber where dozens of Ascended gathered around a central column of swirling energy. As he watched, one of the aliens stepped away from the group and reached up to its face. The humanoid features rippled like water and then simply dissolved. What remained made James clamp a hand over his mouth to stifle a gasp. The true form of the Ascended was crystalline, angular, pulsing with electrical energy that arsed between jagged appendages. No eyes, no mouth, just a complex arrangement of transparent, geometric structures that somehow convey both insect and machine. "Are you seeing this?" he whispered. "Recording everything," Eleanor confirmed, her voice tight with tension. A door at the far end of the chamber opened, and James recognized several world leaders entering: the American president, the Chinese premier, the European Union chancellor. They approached the central column without hesitation, faces blank and eyes reflecting the same electric blue energy that coursed through the Ascended bodies. "They're puppets," Okafor said flatly. "Completely under control." James edged closer to hear the conversation, but suddenly froze as one of the crystalline beings turned directly toward his hiding place. Despite the alien having no visible eyes, James felt seen. An alarm blared through the facility. "They've detected me," James hissed, backing away. "The cloaking device isn't." His transmission cut off as something struck him from behind. As consciousness faded, he glimpsed an Ascended in its humanoid disguise leaning over him. Silver eyes now pulsing with angry blue light. "You see too much, human," it said, voice no longer melodious but distorted and mechanical. "But it changes nothing. The transformation has already begun." Miles away, Eleanor watched James's feed cut to static. She turned to the assembled resistance leaders. "We have what we need," she said grimly. "It's time to show the world the face behind the mask. This is not a hoax. This is not a drill." Eleanor's face filled screens across the globe as the Cassandra network hijacked the emergency broadcast system using modified Ascended communication technology. "What you are about to see is the truth about our so-called benefactors." The footage from James's infiltration played worldwide. The machinery pumping particles into Earth's ecosystems, world leaders with glowing eyes, and most damning of all, the Ascended shedding their humanoid disguises to reveal their true crystalline forms. In Times Square, crowds gathered beneath massive displays, their shocked faces illuminated by the footage. In Beijing, officials scrambled to cut the transmission, only to find their systems unresponsive. In Mumbai, people poured into streets already filled with the choking fog that had been dismissed as seasonal pollution. "The atmospheric changes you've been experiencing are not climate anomalies," Eleanor continued. "They are deliberate alterations to make our planet suitable for Ascended biology, and toxic to our own." She displayed medical scans of affected humans near Ascended facilities: cellular degradation, neurological changes, organ failure. "We estimate 3 months before these effects become global and irreversible. The Ascended are not saviors. They are parasites, consuming worlds and moving on." The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Riots erupted outside Ascended compounds. Military units, acting without orders, established perimeters around affected areas. Citizens flooded hospitals with symptoms previously dismissed as seasonal illness. In Moscow, a government official addressing the panic suddenly collapsed mid-speech, his eyes flaring with blue light before he began reciting alien mathematical sequences. The incident, broadcast live, confirmed everything Eleanor had claimed. At the Cassandra Network's new headquarters, a decommissioned submarine tender in international waters, Eleanor received word that Captain Rivera had arrived. She hurried to the hangar deck where a battered shuttle had just landed. Rivera emerged, but not as she remembered him. Half his face appeared partially paralyzed, one eye clouded with a faint blue luminescence. "They tried to convert me," he explained, noticing her shock. "I fought it, not completely successfully." "How did you escape?" General Okafor demanded, weapon ready at her side. "The mind control isn't perfect," Rivera explained, his good eye focused intensely. "It requires proximity to their amplifiers to maintain. I was able to break free once I got far enough away." He approached the central planning table, pulling up schematics from a data drive. "I have critical intelligence. The ascended terraforming requires a network of 7 synchronized amplifiers positioned strategically around the globe. Destroy even one, and the process is disrupted." Eleanor studied the locations: Siberia, the Australian outback, the Sahara, the Amazon basin, Antarctica, the Pacific seabed, and the Rocky Mountains. "They're built on ley lines of Earth's magnetic field," Kavita observed. "That's why they needed those specific locations." "The good news," Rivera continued, "is that they're vulnerable during energy cycling. The bad news is they're heavily defended, and our window for attack is narrowing." As if to emphasize his point, emergency alerts flooded in from major cities worldwide. Mass casualties from respiratory failure, water supplies turning toxic, vegetation withering overnight. "We've moved beyond warning," Okafor stated grimly. "Now we fight or die." Eleanor nodded, pulling up defensive schematics captured from Ascended databases. "We need 3 coordinated strikes. Small teams, our best people. If we can destroy even 2 amplifiers, we buy time to rally more forces." She looked around at the determined faces of the resistance, scientists, soldiers, and ordinary citizens united against an existential threat. "The Ascended believe we're predictable, easily controlled," she said. "Let's show them humanity's greatest weapon, our unpredictability when fighting for survival." Dawn broke over the Rocky Mountains, the sunlight distorted through an atmosphere increasingly tinted with an alien haze. General Okafor crouched behind a ridge overlooking the amplifier facility, a crystalline structure that seemed to grow directly from the mountainside, pulsing with blue-white energy. "Strike teams in position," her lieutenant whispered, the tactical display on his visor showing green dots representing resistance fighters surrounding the facility. Okafor nodded. "Remember, we need synchronized attacks. The Sahara and Pacific teams are standing by." Halfway across the world, Eleanor monitored all 3 operations from the mobile command center. "Energy cycling begins in 3 minutes," she announced through the secure channel. "That's our window." Rivera, leading the team targeting the underwater Pacific amplifier, adjusted his breathing apparatus. The submersible had taken them as close as possible, but the final approach would require them to swim. "Particles in the water are increasing," his science officer warned. "Exposure limit is 10 minutes before cellular degradation begins." Rivera checked his waterproof explosive charges. "Then we'll do it in 9. At the Sahara site, Kavita's team had infiltrated maintenance tunnels beneath the facility, placing quantum disruption devices at structural weak points identified in the schematics. The scorching desert above had become even more inhospitable, the sand itself beginning to crystallize with alien particulates. 60 seconds to synchronization. Eleanor's voice came through. "All teams, final preparations." In the Rocky Mountains, Okafor gave the signal. Fighter jets appeared on the horizon. The last squadron of an air force whose command structure had been compromised by Ascended influence. The pilots, loyal to humanity, had gone rogue to join the resistance. Aerial distraction commencing. The squadron leader confirmed as missiles streaked toward the facility's outer defenses. Alarms shrieked as the ascended defenses activated. Crystalline turrets emerged from hidden compartments, firing energy beams that vaporized anything they touched. 2 jets exploded midair, but the others continued their attack run. Energy cycling initiated. Eleanor announced, "Strike teams, go." Okafor led her ground forces forward as the aerial assault drew defensive fire. They'd reached the facility's perimeter just as humanoid ascended guards emerged. The resistance fighters opened fire with weapons modified to disrupt the aliens' crystalline structure. The guards fell, their forms shattering like glass, but more were coming. In the Pacific, Rivera's team attached charges to the underwater amplifier's power conduits. A security bulkhead suddenly sealed, trapping 2 team members inside. Rivera heard their screams through the comm as something within liquefied them instantly. "Charges set," he reported, his voice tight. "Retreating to minimum safe distance." In the Sahara, Kavita's team completed their sabotage, but found their exit blocked by ascended reinforcements. "We're cut off," she reported, "but the devices are armed." Countdown initiated. Eleanor confirmed. "All teams, fall back immediately." Okafor's forces began their retreat, but the Ascended unleashed a new weapon, a wave of energy that seemed to distort reality itself. Soldiers caught in its path simply ceased to exist, their matter converted to alien forms. "We can't outrun it," someone shouted. Okafor made a split-second decision. Change of plans. "We're overloading the primary reactor. Everyone to the facility core." "General, that's suicide," Eleanor protested. "Sometimes you have to sacrifice a piece to win the game." Okafor replied calmly, "Make it count." As her team charged toward the heart of the facility, Rivera's underwater charges detonated. Simultaneously, Kavita triggered the Sahara explosives remotely. The synchronized destruction of 2 amplifiers sent shockwaves through the Ascended network. The Rocky Mountain facility's defenses faltered momentarily, just long enough for Okafor's team to reach the core. Her last transmission came through clearly. "Remember us, and finish this." The explosion lit up the Colorado sky like a second sun. The Resistance headquarters erupted in cheers when the amplifier destruction was confirmed, but Eleanor remained somber. The victory had come at a devastating cost. Okafor, dozens of fighters, and regions surrounding the destroyed facilities rendered uninhabitable by backlash radiation. "The terraforming process has slowed," Kavita reported, studying atmospheric readings. "We've bought ourselves weeks, maybe a month," and provoked their full wrath, Rivera added, the blue tinge in his affected eye pulsing more intensely. He winced, pressing a hand to his temple. "They're communicating, planning. I can feel fragments through the residual connection." Eleanor approached him cautiously. "What are they saying?" "They're accelerating the timeline, bringing their mothership into low orbit." He looked up, his good eye filled with fear. "They're done with the pretense of cooperation. Now they'll simply take what they want." Satellite imagery confirmed Rivera's warning. The massive Ascended vessel that had remained beyond the moon's orbit was now moving toward Earth, its crystalline surface refracting sunlight in hypnotic patterns. Eleanor gathered the Resistance leadership. What remained of it? "We've proven we can hurt them, but striking individual amplifiers won't be enough. We need to target the source." "You're talking about attacking their mothership," a military commander said incredulously. "With what? We've lost half our fighters, and conventional weapons barely scratch their technology." Eleanor nodded to Kavita, who pulled up schematics of a device they'd been developing in secret. "We've been studying the quantum frequencies the Ascended use for their hive mind communication. Their consciousness operates on predictable patterns. It's their vulnerability. This device could disrupt those patterns, essentially scrambling their collective intelligence. But it would need to be deployed at the heart of their network," Kavita added. "The mothership's central control chamber." Silence fell over the room as the implication sank in. It would be a suicide mission. "I'll go," Rivera said quietly. Part of me is already connected to them. I might be able to move through their defenses. Not alone, Eleanor replied. I designed the device. I need to ensure proper deployment. Within 12 hours, they had assembled a strike team and modified a captured Ascended shuttle. The plan was audacious, borderline insane. Use Rivera's partial connection to bypass security, reach the control chamber, deploy the quantum disruptor, and escape before the system collapse. No one mentioned the near impossibility of the escape part. As they prepared to launch, resistance bases worldwide launched simultaneous attacks on remaining amplifiers, not to destroy them, but to create a diversion. Every surviving fighter, every allied military unit, every civilian volunteer joined the coordinated assault. The shuttle vibrated as it left Earth's atmosphere, accelerating toward the looming crystalline mass of the mothership. Eleanor stared at the swirling alien architecture growing larger in the view screen, thinking of how far they'd come since that first mysterious signal at Outpost Horizon. Approaching outer defenses, the pilot announced. Automated systems scanning us. Rivera closed his eyes, focusing on the alien presence in his mind. I'm broadcasting the access codes I've gleaned. They're accepting them. For now. The shuttle passed through a shimmering energy field and entered a massive hangar bay. Crystalline structures pulsed with blue-white energy, casting eerie shadows. Remember, Eleanor told the strike team as they armed themselves, we need to reach the central chamber. Everything else is secondary. The shuttle doors opened to an alien environment never meant for human eyes. The air itself seemed to shimmer with potential energy. No resistance yet, Rivera whispered, leading them forward. But they know we're here. They're waiting. For what? Someone asked. Eleanor's grip tightened on the quantum disruptor. For us to reveal our true purpose. As if in response, a melodious voice echoed through the crystalline corridors. Indeed, Dr. Chen. We've been expecting you. The strike team froze as crystalline walls around them pulsed with increasing luminosity. The corridor ahead melted and reformed, opening into a vast chamber unlike anything human architecture could conceive. A cathedral of light and geometry that seemed to extend impossibly in all directions. In the center floated a massive, intricate crystalline structure, a perfect dodecahedron that shimmered with internal energy. As they approached, guided by an invisible force they couldn't resist, Eleanor felt a pressure building inside her mind. The Ascended Collective, Rivera whispered, his partially affected eye now blazing with blue fire. Their unified consciousness. Team members began falling one by one, clutching their heads as the mental pressure overwhelmed them. Soon only Eleanor and Rivera remained standing, the quantum disruptor clutched tightly in her hands. Dr. Eleanor Chen. The voice resonated directly in her mind. The one who saw through our deception from the beginning. How fascinating you are. The crystalline structure pulsed, and a humanoid shape formed before them. Not solid, but composed of light and energy. You were warned to stay away, it continued. That message was not sent out of courtesy, but because we considered humanity too insignificant to consume properly. Your species lacks the complexity we typically harvest. Images flooded Eleanor's mind. Worlds throughout the galaxy, civilizations far more advanced than Earth's, all reduced to barren husks after Ascended visitations. Yet you have surprised us, the entity admitted. Your resistance was unanticipated. This variable makes you more interesting than we initially calculated. Rivera suddenly collapsed to his knees, the alien influence in his system overwhelming him. Eleanor, he gasped. To it now. Her fingers tightened on the quantum disruptor, but before she could activate it, the device floated from her hands into the air before her. A quantum frequency scrambler, the collective observed. Clever, but we adapted to this possibility after your first attack. The disruptor disintegrated into particles that scattered like dust. You have proven yourselves worthy of a choice, Dr. Chen, the entity continued. Join us. Your consciousness can be preserved within our collective. Experience existence across dimensions, across time itself. The alternative is extinction with the rest of your kind." Eleanor's shoulders slumped in apparent defeat. She took a step forward, toward the glowing entity. "After everything," she said quietly, "you still don't understand us." Her hand moved to her pocket, extracting what appeared to be a simple data drive. The collective tilted its luminous head. "Another weapon. We have analyzed all your technology." "Not a weapon," Eleanor replied. "A message. The real reason I came here." She inserted the drive into a port on her wrist computer. "You see, the quantum disruptor was never our actual plan. It was what we expected you to anticipate." The collective's form flickered momentarily. "Explain." "From the beginning, you've collected data on us, analyzed our patterns, predicted our responses, but there's one human trait your calculations can't account for." She smiled. "Creative misdirection." The data drive glowed as it uploaded not a weapon, but an algorithmic virus that Eleanor had designed based on the original signal that had started everything. A self-replicating code that used the Ascended's own quantum communication network against them. "We tried to warn you about us," Eleanor said as the crystalline structures around them began to fracture. "Humans aren't predictable. We don't follow your logic. That's our strength." The virus spread through the Ascended systems worldwide, turning their technology against them. The collective's form destabilized, its voice becoming discordant. "Impossible," it whispered. "Our calculations were wrong," Eleanor finished. "Next time someone warns you about a species, listen." The central chamber began to collapse as Rivera grabbed Eleanor's arm. "Emergency pods, this way." As they raced for escape, the mothership's systems failing around them, Eleanor took one last look at the disintegrating collective. Humanity would rebuild. And next time an alien signal came, perhaps both sides would heed the warnings.